And global affairs analyst Sam Fateh joins me on the news from Washington via Skype to discuss this. Good to have you join us, Sam Fateh. Many people waited anxiously for that verdict on Tuesday when it comes to Alexei Navalny. Were you surprised by the verdict?
I think just like many people, I was not surprised at all. We all knew what the outcome of these hearings or the prosecution was going to be. So the outcome was definite. It was what was expected. It is pretty much how the world is reacting to it. Probably it didn't have the same condemnation that a lot of people were expecting. But mind you, the issue of the coup d'etat in Myanmar overshadowed most of the global events right now. So, but people were expecting more aggressive condemnations and actions from the Biden administration, of course, which is a new government here in the United States, and also from EU nations. And so right now, of course, Kremlin in Russia is trying to downplay the current situation amid all of this mass arrest that's going on, and trying to pretty much avoid what happened in Belarus from happening in Russia.
Absolutely, and I want to get to the sanctions because in a minute, because there is a lot of pressure on the West to impose sanctions on Russia. But first, let me ask you about this protest we're seeing now in Russia and how much of a challenge you think that this might be for the Putin administration going forward.
I mean, obviously, if people continue to come out, if there is some form of mobilization and people can resist the security intimidation that is happening right now with the police arresting everybody, then it may grow large. I think what everybody else is thinking is that, look, he is not good. The people in Russia are not going to risk it all just because of one individual. But here is a man who you know on domestic issues. His politics is very interesting. In domestic issues, he will disagree with Putin on a lot of stuff. But when it comes to Russia's standing in international politics, he pretty much says the same things like Putin. And that he does that strategically in order to make Russians understand that, you know, he is strong and he can do better than Putin. But he is focusing on the domestic issues. And a lot of people in Russia can relate to some of the domestic and socioeconomic hardships that they face within the country. Now, the question is, will that political tactic be enough for him to generate or to start a mass political movement, not just for his release, but for a change of government? It's Russia. That would be very difficult to start.
But have we seen, now to go into the sanctions we're talking about, have we seen any significant reaction from the West concerning this? We saw reactions when you mentioned Myanmar earlier. We saw the reactions when it comes to Myanmar. But have we seen any significant reaction for Alexei Navalny?
Not the kind of reaction and condemnations that one would per se expect to occur when the whole situation started. I mean, it's number two, you need to understand, it's Russia. I mean, this is a country that has veto power at the United Nations Security Council. So it's not easy to sanction. You can verbally condemn it. It's not easy to sanction them. And it looks like when it involves some domestic politics of this nature, there are maybe more of back-channel diplomacy and back-channel talks and conversations and negotiations in order to secure Navalny's release instead of just having an open, outright verbal confrontation with Russia. So they really have to think about what strategy they are going to use, what leverage they have here. And when it comes to Russia, currently there are issues that are at the UN Security Council that they are negotiating. So everybody has some sort of leverage here. So they may be using a lot of back-channel diplomacy here.
But there are also questions as to how the West should respond. Should China be suspended from maybe the United Nations Security Council, the Council of Europe, and those kind of tough sanctions on Russia? How should the West respond quickly because of our time?
The West is a key player. Russia is a key player in international politics, especially looking at all the situation in Eastern Europe and their military involvement in the Middle East, like in Syria. So it is very difficult. What most people naturally expect is that, like, if an African nation does something, we always see a straight out condemnation from everybody. Most people would expect that. But we need to understand perhaps it's easier to condemn a small nation like the Gambia in Africa compared to outright condemning a nation like Nigeria, right? It's going to take diplomats some tactic and time and craft their words more properly. So when it comes to Russia, it's the same difficulty that they are facing. It's a key player. They are involved a lot in the Middle East and other places that the Western nations have interest in. So what they can do right now is they can discuss this in the back end. Of course, they're going to be tough with each other in terms of these discussions, but they might not do it in the open. People naturally expect that, but sometimes that's not how politics and governance work in the international scene.
I want to talk about Germany, which is where Alexei Navalny was hospitalized when he was injected with the Novichok substance, which is a poison. And now there is pressure on Germany to suspend the pipeline contract it has with Russia, just to send a message that the country doesn't condone this kind of activity. Is this something that you think Germany would do, especially when you look at the fact that that pipeline contract is mutually beneficial for both countries?
And that was exactly what I was about to say. You see, politics is one thing, and upholding human rights and in international politics is another thing. But also, when governments engage, they engage based on their own national interest. That fact is very critical and very important to both nations. Is it worth it for them to break that fact, just to send a message to secure a politician's release? Probably. It is in any effort to ensure that Navalny's release is secured. They will take that effort. Germany has a very long-standing relationship with Russia, even from the First World War. So that will come into play here. So they would have to take that lead. But it is not enough to have them break a pact right now.
Global Affairs analyst Sam Fateh, good to talk to you as always. Thanks for talking to us.